Okay. Did you want to do an intro or no? I guess not. I'm going to go ahead. All right, guys. So I'm Maggie, and I am a certified professional dog trainer through the CCPDT, which is a really hard thing to say. It's basically the Certification Council for Professional Dog Trainers. I work in Toronto, but I kind of go most places. I also do virtuals. And I'm very pleased to be here tonight helping with Fetchden and with Juliana to give you guys some information. We can move on to the next slide. This is a new platform for me, so I'm still learning it. Okay, so here's my little bio. I offer puppy and teenage classes right now. I work with adults as well. So the teenage classes kind of include adults because some people, their dogs don't, really mature for quite a while. I do private sessions. I do seminars. When we're open to do so. And I do webinars. I specialize in fearful and reactive dogs in the sense that that's kind of my main amount of work that I do, but I like to do puppies and teenagers to try to prevent dogs being fearful because I'd actually really like to not see as many of them. So my methods are science-based, which means that everything that I talk about is based in actual science, not in myth. And LEMA, which is the code of ethics from the CCPDT, means that when I train, I always choose the least aversive of any of the methodology to deal with a dog. And then we actually just gradually increase any pressure, etc., if it's necessary. Luckily, I'm good at what I do, so I don't have to do that very often. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about puppy and dog development. Very quickly, actually, because it's, a big subject. The socialization period, when people talk about a socialization period with your puppies, it starts to close at about 12 weeks, which is why we really encourage people as soon as they get their puppies, whether that's at 8 weeks or 10 weeks, that they get out in the world, not into dog parks, but safely socializing and exposed to things, because the socialization critical period closes at about 16 weeks. What happens after that, of course, is dogs start to be more suspicious about new things. So we want to introduce them to as many new things as possible so that we don't have that fear afterwards. Teething. I just realized my dog has a squeaky toy in her crate. Sorry, you're probably going to hear a little squeaking here now and then, but it's better than barking, so we'll take that. Teething, official teething, which means they're losing their baby teeth, those little razor shark type teeth, starts somewhere between 13 and 16 weeks, and their adult teeth are usually in by 6 months. This means that in that period, they're actually going to be biting more again. It's very sad. Puppy license. So what puppy license is if puppy is with an adult dog, if the dog is puppy friendly, generally that's the best type of dogs to be around. When the puppy hits about 5.5 months, there's actually going to be, the older dog will start telling them, that's enough. You've done that. You're a teenager now. Stop acting like a baby. So if you do take your puppy to groups or to play dates and that sort of thing, and the other dog is older, they will start being less tolerant of really infant behavior and will start telling your puppy off. So don't be surprised. Adolescence starts at 5 to 6 months. Hence, that's when the puppy license expires. It can last a long time. It really depends on the individual dog. They're very much like humans. So adolescence, the behavior can go quite a while. I think I'm going to have to go take my dog's toy away. It can last till 2 years. When adolescence happens, it means your dog is going to stop listening to you. It's not on purpose. It's because their brain is doing other things. There's a lot of development that goes on in their brain at this age, like a lot. It's almost equivalent to what happened when they were like brand new babies. And they are actually not able to focus on more than one thing at a time. So behavior changes a lot during that time, and a lot of it is being patient with them at that time. Social maturity starts around 1 to 2 years. Again, depends on breed. Generally, the bigger the dog, the longer it takes for them to mature. Like Labrador retrievers especially, they take forever to mature. But when we talk about social maturity, what that means is they're starting to be like the equivalent of, I don't know, like a 15 to 17-year-old human, where they're starting to think, I can make decisions on my own, and I'm an adult now, and I'm going to do all these things. But they also don't have a great ability to make good decisions. So we have to try to weigh what type of decisions they tend to be making at that time as to how we train and how we manage them. Social maturity also means that dogs who are prone, certain breeds who are prone to being guard dogs, like the Mastiffs and the Shepherds and so on, that is when they're usually going to show issues with people coming in the house, because they're going to start thinking they need to do their jobs. We also see if in dogs breeds who may be prone to dog aggression, that's usually when you're going to start to see aggression towards other dogs. It doesn't mean you can't work with it, but just don't be surprised if that happens. Adulthood can start anytime from 2 to 5 years, depending on the breed. And the senior label, again, it sort of goes with size, is usually added around 8 to 9 for most larger breeds, which means like at your veterinarian, when they're talking about health, like wellness checks and stuff, usually at that time, they'll start recommending doing complete blood work and things like that to make sure that you're catching anything that might be developing underneath with their aging, like kidney disease and so on and so forth.
Maggie, we have 2 questions. One is, there is usually the statement that a dog is at the equivalent intellect of a 3-year-old kid.
Yes.
Is that in terms of reasoning, or what do they mean by that?
Yes, it is. It's generally, we talk about reasoning and impulse control. Their decisions are not always great. They don't think before they act. Plus, I mean, as much as they learn some verbals from us, they're not able to process conversations, just like 3-year-old children. They can get bits and pieces of it. But yes, it's like the people say, well, my dog is an adult and I can just leave him out in the yard. And I'm like, well, yeah, but if you leave him there long enough, he's going to find bad things to do, like a 3-year-old would do, right? What's that? Can I put it in my mouth? So when I talk about the teen behavior, whereas earlier they might not be as confident to go ahead and do things like take off on their owner, but they might do that when they hit teenagehood. Or they might start saying, I don't want you to do that anymore. I want to do this instead. Those sort of things. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And then the second question is, we tend to do 1 dog year is 7 human years. Is that in terms of physical perspective, or why we do this? It's
actually more towards the physical perspective. The problem, of course, is that you can't really do that direct comparison, simply because giant dogs like the Irish Wolfhounds and the Great Danes do not live as long. So you couldn't really accurately put 1 year as 7 years, because with tiny breeds, sometimes they live to be 19 or 20 years old. So it's not super accurate. I think it's really just a case of reminding people that dogs don't live as long as we do, which is a sad thing. Okay, so the basics of behavior. This is a little bit of learning stuff that's going to come up in the next couple of slides, just because I think it's important people kind of understand what's happening. Dogs do what works for them. They are innocently selfish, is how I describe it. What they want to do is what they're going to do. So what we have to do when we're training is try to find a way to convince them that they want to do what we want them to do. So it's really sometimes a bit of problem solving. If you don't pay them enough to do something that's really hard for them, they're not going to do it. They're going to walk away. So keep that in mind. It has to work for them and for you. When I say behavior is in the environment, what that means is, like when you have a puppy, they don't generalize very well. So you have to teach, like just say you teach sit or down or whatever in your living room. You might have to reteach it in the elevator or reteach it outside, so on and so forth, until the puppy goes, oh, I do it everywhere. Because for them, every single environment or environmental change changes the rules. So you may see different behavior from a dog in their home, from what you'll see at class, from what you'll see at the dog park, from what you'll see on the street, or even in the veterinarian. So anytime you add a change in environment, you are going to see changes in behavior. So all those people who say, well, he's never done that before. It's like, well, has he been in this environment before? He's not going to act the same way as he would if he was, home. Dogs are discriminators, not generalizers. That's actually why we started I guess we didn't really domesticate the dogs. They domesticated themselves along with us. One of the reasons we decided to be friends with dogs was because they are great discriminators. They would be like, there's a thing in the backyard. There's somebody at the door, right? That's their job. Something is different. I'm going to tell you about it. So again, when we're trying to generalize behavior that we're teaching them, we have to be very consistent, and we have to be patient that they might not know how to do something in one environment and do know how to do it in another. Behavior does not occur in a vacuum. So basically what that means is the behavior of the dog is also reflective of what's going on around them, which includes you. So sometimes we do something that creates a behavior, and we have to be very, very careful when we're training our dogs, or if we're having dog like behavior issues. It's important for us to realize that often we are part of the issue, and that when we change our behavior or we change the environment, we can change the dog's behavior. When we talked earlier about socialization periods, once a dog becomes a certain age, new things they've never seen before, never interacted with before, are either going to be safe or dangerous. Their default is dangerous. This is instinctive behavior for them, because if they were still wild, that's how they not get, killed by bears and so on and so forth. They have to learn what is safe and what is dangerous. And they're just going to say, that's dangerous until I know better, because it is important to survive. So that behavior is still there. It's actually still there for us as well, but we tend to socialize it sort of out of the front of our mind. Okay.
We have a question here. When is the right time, or how do you teach a dog to be fearful of cars so they don't out of the blue run out to the street to chase something? Okay. That's kind of a tough one, because we don't want them to be afraid of cars, because that can create different behaviors that we don't like running away or even running after them, because some dogs, even when they're fearful, will try to chase things away. What we want to do is build impulse control and work on what I call border training, right? So basically you teach the dog that when there's a curb or there's a side of a road, they sit and they stay until you release them, or they stand and they stay, whatever you want to use, so that they learn that they don't cross the road unless you say go. I think that's probably one of the best ways to do it. You should also have a really strong recall on your dog, which is like the come cue. Dogs who chase cars are usually already afraid, just so you know. But there's ways we can fix that, but that's a little more complicated than what we're going to talk about tonight. We can talk about it at the end when we have more time for questions. Okay, so dog behavior interpretations. This is one of the things I come across a lot with my clients. People will say, well, this behavior is happening and I don't understand why. It seems that he's, barking at nothing, like the dog is barking. Well, one, we have to remember that dogs have hearing like you cannot imagine. So there is never barking at nothing. There's something. We just can't, with our senses, recognize it. So could be a raccoon. It could be they're scared of something. Someone is coming or something moved.
So we have to consider that barking at nothing really doesn't exist. So we have to kind of figure out why they're barking and work on from there. Holes in my lawn. So dogs who dig, which is also a breed specific thing in some cases, they're bored, they're over aroused, which means something's freaked them out, like a squirrel or another dog or whatever, and they don't know what else to do, so they dig a hole. Or there could be a rabbit, a bug, snakes, smell, something that causes them to physically put a hole in the ground to try to get something. See this a lot in like terriers and things like that. So again, holes in my lawn, people think that the dog is being bad. They're not being bad, they're being dogs, and we need to find a way to manage that. So get over here, we have to go. These are the people who say, well, my dog won't come to me. I don't understand. I don't understand why he's doing it. Well, the dog doesn't want to leave. If you're, having fun, or you're at the beach or you're at the dog park, whatever, the dog doesn't want to leave. Often they're not going to come, especially if you're yelling at them. Okay. There's a thing here that's more interesting than you are at the moment. We have to remember that with dogs, we are often competing with what is in the environment. And one thing I see very, very commonly, especially at dog parks, is when people are calling their dogs, they call them like they're angry. And that is you're scaring me. I mean, if my person always yelled at me to get over here, I wouldn't want to go over there because you don't know what's going to happen. One of the things we have to do when we're training is make sure that our recall cue is sacred and that we use it only for positive things. Okay. Why my stuff? These are the people who say, well, I don't know why, but the dog always goes and gets my shoe or my sweater or my phone and chews it. Well, again, we have to look at, there's many reasons why it could be happening. It could be that the dog has a little bit of separation anxiety and the thing smells like you. And dogs are oral animals, just like little babies. Again, everything goes in their mouth. It soothes them. And in the process, they chew the heck out of them. Okay. The chase game sometimes is fun. So they figure out that if they go and grab your sock, you will chase them. And so they love that game. They'll do that. And sometimes it's just, I really like the texture of socks. So again, we do training to try to help this, but we also have to understand why dogs do these things. You're supposed to heal. So here we go with the dogs, puppies and adults alike, who pull their owners all over the place, whether that's to sniff something or pee on something or get to the dog park. Usually that's because teaching a dog to walk nicely is really hard work. Like it's really hard work. So people don't do it. And we are really slow. We have 2 legs, dogs have 4. And they really want to go fast. And sometimes they really want to get somewhere. So again, we have to understand the dog is not being bad. They're not fully trained. And we have to understand why they pull to the park, but not home, or why they pull to go see the specific, fire hydrant, because everyone in the neighborhood pees there and he has to go pee on it. We have to understand those things and use them to train the dog. So again, a lot of people think, they're just mad at what's happening instead of looking at the reasons the dog might be doing it, because that gives us information on how to fix the behaviors.
Maggie, I have a question actually about my dog. So he's overall 3 years old. He's pretty good. He listens, he's obedient and so on. But when it comes to meeting people, he gets so excited that he forgets about everything and starts jumping. And he's jumping, I mean, in their faces, and I worry that he's going to break their nose and I have to pay for the plastic surgery. So what else can we do, even though that they are well-behaved dogs, it's just they can manage that emotion, that excitement.
Okay. Well, again, Jojo's how old again? 3?
3 years old, yeah.
He's still a young dog. I mean, part of that is management, which means if you're meeting somebody on the street or whatever and he's on a leash, you do have control because you have a leash. So use that leash. Move him away, ask him to sit, make sure he's calm before you say, go say hi. If he starts to jump up, you remove him so that he starts to learn. You're basically using positive reinforcement. You can go say hi. And then if you jump up, I remove you, which is negative punishment. So we're taking something away he wants. You have to really work hard on this, because dogs, especially small dogs, they really want to be near your face. And that is something that is sort of residual to being a puppy. So we just have to work on sit to go say hi, stand on four, like all four on the floor, work on those type of things and manage the behavior when you can. So like, for example, I have a dog who loves to jump on people too. And she's a big dog, which makes things a little scary for some people, even though it's all in love. So basically, when I'm around people that don't know her well, she's on a leash before she has to be perfectly calm before I will let her go say hi. As she's gotten older, she's now almost 4, she will keep her feet on the floor now, unless you get really way down and then she'll jump up and try to put her feet on your shoulders because she likes to kiss your face. So we have to understand that that's very much a dog behavior. It's normal and we just have to be patient and keep working on it. Okay, so ABCs of behavior. This is when we sort of talk about how dogs learn. This is also how all animals who have a frontal cortex, which includes us, learn. I'm not going to get into the whole thing of operant conditioning. That's a little complicated, but basically, if you're going to reinforce something, it increases the behavior. And if you're going to punish it, it decreases the behavior. If the behavior does not increase when you think you're reinforcing it, you're not using something that's a reinforcer to the dog. If you are using something that you think is supposed to punish the dog, like the bark collar, for example, and the behavior does not decrease, it means the collar is not punishing for the dog. So we have to remember that the learner decides what is reinforcing and what is punishing. And sometimes you'd be surprised at what dogs actually think about things. Like some dogs don't like to be pet. That's not their thing. They don't find it reinforcing. So if you just ask your dog to sit and all you ever do is pet them on the head and they don't like petting on the head, you're not going to see more sits. Simple as that. Okay. So generally, if you don't see an increase, you're not reinforcing. You have to be a little more creative. And if you don't see a decrease, you have to be a little more creative with punishment. I am not, by the way, recommending punishment. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a second. So the ABCs, we have an antecedent, which is something that happens before. That's your cue. It does not have to be a word cue. It can be an environmental cue. So for example, in this one, it says sit, and below it, it says there's a knock. So a knock is not something we do. We don't cue a dog to knock, right? Somebody knocks at the door, the dog barks. So the consequence is what creates whether the behavior is going to go up or go down. So if the dog sits and you give him a treat, chances are your dog's sitting is going to increase. If the dog barks at the door and you use a bark collar, for example, one that has like a vibe or a shock collar or whatever, citronella, some of them have, if the dog finds it punishing enough, it will decrease the behavior. But again, we're going to talk a little bit about the bit in the middle that says conditioned emotional response. The reason positive reinforcement-based trainers and science-based trainers do not recommend the use of punishment right off the bat is because it always runs the risk of creating conditioned emotional responses, which can include anxiety, fear, and aggression. So depending on the dog. We have to be really, really careful when we choose to use what we call positive punishers, things that we apply to punishment. So again, like a citronella collar, etc. It can cause a lot of stress to the dog. And then especially with puppies, when they get older, then they end up either becoming super fearful of you, or they can start saying, yeah, if you do that again, I'm going to bite you. So we have to be really careful when we use that, which is why I don't use it unless I absolutely have to. Okay? Okay, so I see. Use citronella when Jojo was a puppy, and well, between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. Oh my goodness, he was busy. I understand. That's one of those situations, especially if you live in a building. Your neighbors really don't want to listen to your dog going crazy between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. So in those cases, it might be recommended to do that, but I would probably look at a much bigger picture and try to find a way and find out why he's going nuts between 11 and 2. Why is early training important? So here's the thing. It used to be back in the day, and I mean, I'm old. So back in the day, people never even took their dogs to puppy classes and stuff until they were 6 months old. And the reasoning for that was, back in the day, people really only used punishment. And they didn't feel good punishing baby puppies, so they just didn't do anything until they were 6 months old, and then they put a choke chain on them or whatever. So that's very, very old school, and we know a lot more now. What we know is that early training and helping your dog learn good behaviors and socializing them helps keep dogs in their homes, helps keep them safe, makes a big difference long term. And I think it also is really good for building relationship between you and your puppy. So as I've listed here, learning to learn, because you kind of have to learn how things work, right? Builds confidence in dogs, especially when you're doing things like clicker training and that sort of thing, where you're building experiences where the puppy learns to offer behavior to you. Young brains are really malleable, so they have the ability to take in a lot more information, though it is in very tiny bits at a time, because their attention span's about that big. Lots of information could go in, and they can learn a lot of things early. It's prevention of problem behaviors. So like if you don't want your dog, barking at people, you can train it really early and get rid of that really fast. But if the dog has done it for years and years, it's a little harder to fix. And husbandry. So again, if you have a dog who is a little high maintenance, so what I mean is dogs who need, grooming, like actual clipping and so on and so forth, or are dogs who might have more health issues than others, because some breeds have more issues than others. These are really good reasons for you to get your puppy accustomed to being brushed and having his eyes looked at and his ears looked at and his nails done and his anal glands looked at and things like that, so that when they do go to the groomer or they go to the vet, so this is for every dog, when they go to the vet, it's not as stressful. Like if they know what to expect, what it looks like to have something stuck in your ear and looking at things, then those things are so much easier for them in the new environment. So it's all about creating dogs who decide not to have to aggress towards the veterinarian or the groomer and have to be muzzled, etc. So this is really important stuff, and a lot of pet owners don't do it. So I think you would find the more you look at pet, like really good puppy classes nowadays, they do have sections on husbandry, like in their classes, where they teach people about that stuff. And then something that Julianne had asked me to look into is old dogs can't learn new tricks. They can, just like old people like me can learn new tricks. I mean, we can learn all sorts of new things. Our brains are constantly learning new things and growing and pruning and so on and so forth. So it is possible to teach older dogs things. You don't have to worry that they haven't had training. The hard part, though, is that you have to look at their history of habit and how long they've practiced the behavior. So again, if your dog has been barking since he was 3 months old and you never did anything about why he was barking, trying to get him to stop barking when he's 8 because you've moved from a house into a condo is going to be very hard, because his brain has that loop going on in his brain. Just like us with any other habit, whether that's overeating or smoking or anything like that, the more we do it, the more we want to do it, that sort of thing. We also have to look at, with old dogs, their mental and physical abilities. Now, what that means is some older dogs have cognitive disorders, or they have arthritis, or they have hearing issues. Any of those things we have to look at when we're training new things and work it, I guess, be reasonable about what we can and cannot teach them that they can physically do. Again, you have to be kind of creative. Like, you're not going to go and do agility with a 12-year-old dog, but you can get him to climb over small things, maybe in the woods, right? So there's things that you can do. And we have to look at the desire of the trainer. That would be me or you, like as a dog owner. How much do you want to teach your dog? Like, do you really want to put the work in? If you do, then do it. It's good for them. It is really, really good for them, especially in the case of preventing cognitive decline and preventing physical decline. The more your dog does within reason, the longer they live, the longer they're healthy, the longer they're mentally healthy, just like people. We don't want to just sit there and do nothing once we hit a certain age. It's better for you to keep moving.
Quick question about the collars that spray air.
Yes.
Is that something sensible to do and is okay, or is a little bit cruel?
You mean with the citronella, like you were talking about?
Yeah, with or without citronella, there are collars that just spray air just to kind
Right.
of get the dog attention. I'm like, no.
It would depend on the dog. I generally don't recommend them, like I said, unless it's an emergency in the case that, you know, you live in a condo and your dog's barking at midnight. I think anything that works through startle, so air being stuffed up their nose really quickly by a collar, can be quite startling, can create anxiety. So we have to be really careful. It depends a lot on the dog. There are better ways. Okay, so myths and misconceptions about training. Here's a big one. I hear this all the time. A lot of it has come from TV or has come from old theory that's been misproven, but I'm just going to read them out. Dogs are trying to dominate you. You need to be alpha. Growling or barking is aggression and is bad. You need to go through doors first. You should eat before your dog. Your barking and growling dog is protecting you. Humping is dominance. That's why I put the humps for half mile sign. I think it's kind of funny. The truths and the facts. Well, you already control everything your dog has and does. So he's not trying to dominate you. He's trying to get stuff, sure. Because again, as we said earlier, he's innocently selfish. But really, you already control everything. How can you possibly control the dog more? We decide when they go out. We decide when they eat. We decide where they go. We decide who their friends are. So we have to be aware that the dogs are not trying to dominate you. They're just trying to make their lives fun. So there you go. When we talk about needing to be alpha, a lot of times people think that means having to be aggressive with your dog, having to be really firm. Sometimes it means having to take your dog and pin it on their back or whatever. Don't do that, by the way. Just don't. Fear is not respect. Train your dog. That is not training. That is, in my personal opinion, using fear to train an animal is unethical. So, and we have to think about that. We don't use that for kids anymore either, right? So be aware, you can do a lot of damage to a dog by not respecting the fact that they're dogs and they're going to do dog things. Growling and barking are warnings. So if your dog growls at you for something or growls at somebody else for something, or barks at them, it's almost always because they're afraid or uncomfortable. And just like us, we should have every right to be able to say, you're making me uncomfortable. Please back away. Please don't speak to me that way. Please don't whatever. That's all they're doing is telling you. And they're warning you. You want warning. You do not want a dog who suddenly goes, I'm going to bite you now. So barking and growling and freezing and all of those things are actually warnings because the dog does not want to bite you. So you need to, yes, yawning is a sign of stress. That's a good point. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. So yeah, there are a lot of reasons why dogs do things, and that is their voice. Don't punish their voice away. Okay, respect the growl. Okay, where was I? Okay, so your dog doesn't care who goes first. Like this whole thing about going through the doors first, eating before your dog. He doesn't care. That's not important. That's myth based on old alpha theory, which again has been completely disproven. Your dog just wants to eat, and whether that's before or during or after you eat, it really makes no difference behaviorally. And he doesn't care if he wants to go through the door first. He just wants to go because he's fast and he wants to go. He's faster than you are. So when I teach dogs to wait at the door and wait for me to say, okay, go, before they go through, it's only because of safety. I don't want to fall out the doorway because my dog is pulling me down the street. I want them to wait, but it has nothing to do with who goes first or who doesn't go first. When dogs bark and growl at other people and you think they're protecting you, chances are they are fearful and they are protecting themselves. So we have to get our little ego around that, but it's usually they're protecting themselves because they feel fearful. It doesn't mean your dog would never protect you, but that would usually only be in extreme circumstances. Okay. And we never know until that actually happens, whether your dog is going to do that or whether they're going to run away. because they're like people. Some people stay, some people run away. Humping, because, oh my goodness, humping in the dog park, or humping, the child, or humping the owner. It usually means the dog is anxious, overstimulated, which means they're over-aroused and they don't know what to do, so they do something that feels good. Or they're confused and frustrated. So if humping is happening at the dog park, for example, I will remove the dog just because it's a pain in the butt to the other dogs. But it's not that they're trying to dominate anybody. There's a huge difference between a dog who is, humping and then running away to get the other dog to play with them, and a dog who comes up and threatens another dog. It's not the same thing. What about humping after eating? Good question. Oh, my dog. Speaking of dogs, I might have to let her out of the crate because she's going to start barking. Humping after eating, I would say that that's probably related to him being really, really excited about his dinner. And that afterwards he doesn't know what to do with himself. And some dogs actually have little tiny like toys and stuff or pillows that they use to hump because it's a way of getting rid of stress or excitement. I'm going to remove myself for 1 second to let my dog out of her crate. Give me a sec.
No problem. Go ahead. I do have the JoJo of humping after eating, but I'm not sure I want to let him have a pillow because then I think he's going to get more and more into the behavior. So I'm going to wait for Maggie and ask that.
Okay. Sorry, you were saying...
So my dog does that, obviously, after eating, and I'm always afraid that if I allow him or give him a pillow that is dedicated to that, his AKA girlfriend,
Yes.
He's just going to do it more and more and more, and then when I have visitors or whatever, it's just going to be a very common habit.
Okay, well, yes, that is absolutely a possibility. So the thing is, we have to look at is why is he so excited about his dinner that he has to hump afterwards? And if you want to change that behavior, you have to give him another outlet. Again, it's not wrong that he wants to hump afterwards. And yes, it's a habit. It's already a habit if you're giving him the pillow to his girlfriend. But if it's problematic for you, you can, yes, exactly. Maybe playing afterward. Give him something to do, right? So that he's not humping. Give him something else to do. We may also look at trying to reduce his arousal about eating, which might be feeding him out of a food toy instead of feeding him out of a dish. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can do to help reduce that arousal. He sounds like he really loves his food. I can relate. Okay, so here I just have some pictures because we're going to talk a little bit about body language. That's my dog with the big scary teeth, just so you know. That's also her in the main picture. I want to talk a little bit about people who don't really recognize whether dogs are stressed or not. Now, I will tell you now that the little Australian cattle dog that's in the main photo was pretty stressed about my dog. My dog was just trying to get her to play, but the puppy had never had another friend, and Shebang is a big dog. So by the end of the evening, just so you know, they were playing fine, but I took this picture. Really, she was just like, I'm not sure about you. And if you look about it, it's kind of hard to see. Her tail is down. Her mouth is shut. Whereas Shebang's is open. And again, it looks like she's showing her teeth. She's not actually, but her tongue is hanging out a little bit. Her face is relaxed. The puppy's face is not. So we need to be really, really clear about, we have to look at the entire dog, not just whether the tail is wagging, not just whether their mouth is open or not, but the whole dog. So the little Chihuahua on the far left is stressed. Mouth is shut. Ears are pinned back, is what we call that. And we're seeing a little bit of whale eye. And now what that means is a little bit of whites around the eye. Generally with dogs, you don't see a lot of white because that's not how their eyes are built. They have a huge amount of iris, right? When their face tenses, you start to see more white. Some breeds, you're going to see a little more white than others, like pugs and bulldogs and things like that, just because their eyes are kind of too big for their face. But generally, if you start to see that whale, that half moon eye, you are looking at stress. So we see that in the puppy as well. The boxer at the bottom left is showing a stress sign of licking her nose. She was overexcited. She didn't know what to do. Okay. Sometimes you'll see little tiny tongue flicks that show that the dog is trying to calm themselves. Stress can be good stress or bad stress. So we have to think about that as well. Okay. Excitement is also stress. The little black puppy in the bottom center is actually resource guarding. She has, I'm not even sure if that's a toy. I think it's a toy. This is a little puppy that came and stayed with me last year. And it turns out she's a pretty strong resource guarder, which for her age was kind of surprising. Basically, if you look at the body language, she has the thing in her mouth. Both of her feet are on either side of the item. Her head is lowered, and you can see her eyes are watching me. She's like, don't try to take this thing. I don't like it when you take things. So we worked on that, and she's cured of that, by the way. But I was like, oh, okay. So again, she's showing whale eye. Now, the picture on the right bottom, you can see a little bit of whites of the eyes of my dog if you look close enough. But that's just her face. She's playing with the other puppy that's just to the right of her. That was all just for show. When they show their entire mouth like that, it's usually play. They were, face fighting and so on and so forth. So oddly enough, people would think that that one is the scariest one when really the little puppy with the toy is scarier. Okay. The one at the top right, that dog was very unsure. And so this is a dog who her tail is down. You can barely see it. It's kind of hiding behind her legs. Her back legs are splayed. So what that says, I had cookies. She was very distrustful of me. She was a new rescue from Egypt. She really wanted food, but she really didn't want to be close to me. So we did a lot of me tossing food away just because it's not fair to lure a dog in and then suddenly be too close. But she was ready. The reason her feet are splayed like that is because she was ready to run away at any moment. So as much as she doesn't look overtly fearful, we have to look at the fact that her mouth is shut, her body is still, her tail is down, and her back legs look like they're going in a completely opposite direction as the rest of her body. Okay, on to the next one. All right, so a few more pictures. Again, you're going to see more pictures of my dog, but the smaller signs of stress, as Judy mentioned earlier, we have lip licking, head turns, which basically means, well, actually, you can kind of see it in the bottom picture there. They're both small dogs, but the dog that's on top, so to speak, is staring hard at the little dachshund, and the dachshund's head is down and slightly turned. That's kind of like trying to say, okay, I'm good. You really don't need to do this to me. So anytime you see a dog, you sometimes see it with adult dogs and puppies who come up. The adult dog is there and the puppy comes up, hi, what are you doing? And the adult dog goes, okay, I don't want to talk to you right now. That's just a really polite way of saying, I really don't want you in my face. So that's something to keep in mind. Scratching. So again, sometimes dogs scratch because they're itchy. Sometimes they scratch, especially if they're scratching at their collar area, because they feel a lot of pressure. So they're feeling frustrated. They're stressed by something. I see it a lot in training where people are really intense with their dogs and like, sit. And then the dog sits and goes, oh my God, and scratches themselves. So to keep in mind that those are really subtle ways of the dog trying to say, I really don't feel comfortable with what we're doing. I need a break. And sometimes in puppies, it means they need to go to the bathroom. Shaking off. Shaking off is when a dog, it's like they're wet, but they're not. What they're trying to do, excuse me a second. What they are trying to do is reduce their stress. It's like us kind of taking a deep breath. That's what they're doing. They're shaking off their stress. So again, it's a good thing. I will usually tell a dog, oh, nice shake off, right? Give them a treat because I want them to learn how to release their stress. But it also means from the perspective of the handler that we should be watching. If your dog is shaking off frequently, there's a dog who's stressed by stuff, and we have to kind of figure out what's happening there. I mean, obviously they're trying to shake it off, but it shouldn't be happening frequently. It should only be happening once in a while. Closed mouth, we talked a little bit about that. Now, the opposite of that, of course, is the dog who is panting because they're stressed. What that usually is pretty intense panting when the dog is not thirsty and has not been running. So if they're not hot and they're not thirsty and they haven't been running and they're panting, there's stress going on. And sometimes that's fear. Sometimes it's anxiety because they're not totally the same thing. And sometimes it means they're in pain. So we also have to think about some of these behaviors you'll see in a dog who is having medical issues that have not been, that are not obvious. So something to keep in mind. Flat tongue. So it's a little hard to describe, but if you see dogs who are panting, stress panting, and their tongue is out, but the bottom end looks almost like a flat spoon, their mouth and everything is really tense, and their tongue, the muscles in their tongue have spread. And that is actually a stress sign as well. Crouching. So again, a dog who's kind of crouching, afraid. Freezing. Whoops. We've lost a couple of slides. I don't know what's happening. That's okay. Keep going back. You're almost there. Get to go back a little farther. Okay, well, a little farther. Thank you. Oh, all right. So crouching, freezing, which means they've suddenly stopped moving. Usually if a dog suddenly stops moving, they're either going to explode or they're going to shut down. So either one of those things are not good. You don't want to see that. Pacing. So I see that a lot with dogs at the dog park who don't want to be at the park. They're at the gates, pacing back and forth. Something to keep in mind. And whale eye, which we talked about earlier. Signals of fun. So the top two pictures, play bows with bent elbows. So if you see dogs are playing and you see lots of flexiness in the front of their body and their bodies are wiggly and loose, those dogs are having fun and they're relaxed and they're having a good time. Okay. They have a loose body, loose tail. They're kind of like noodly wiggly, usually have an open mouth, but it depends on what part of the play they're in. And they have a wiggly, loose tongue. Like if you look at the shepherd in the middle, that's a Dutch shepherd. That is a happy face, right? Kind of relaxed. The tongue's not out too far. You know, eyes are nice and wide open. He's happy. He's relaxed. He's playing with his toy. The two bottom ones, the one on the left, that's my dog again. Who is telling that puppy in no short amount of words that you should really move away right now, or I'm going to yell at you. So, and you can see the whale eye, right? So she's a little ticked off at the puppy who was staying, who took it very well when she corrected him. He was being rude and jumping up on her, and she'd had enough. The little bottom ones, when we talk about big signals of trouble, freezing, targeting. So if you look at where the little Chihuahua mix, where his face is, looking right at the other dog's head, that's targeting. If I'm going to bite you, that's where I'm going to bite you. Okay. So if a dog is staring at your knee, he's going to bite you in the knee. If he's like staring at your face, he's going to bite you in the face, just so you know. Tight body. So you can see how stiff she is. Her tail is what we call flagged, which is up and very alert. If the dog is fearful, the tail will usually go down. And this dog is also doing what we call teeing up. So remember we talked about humping a little bit earlier? This is, if you see your dog go up to a dog or another dog do this to your dog at the dog park, where they go up and they're just doing like a perpendicular, like a T, and then getting up on your dog, that's a threat. Okay, that is a threat. It is not humping. So that's the difference. That is a dog trying to be aggressive and bullying your dog, just so you know. And standing over, which means the other dog has submitted and said, I'm not a threat, really, why are you doing this to me? And the other dog stands over them like, yeah, you don't move. Okay, so we have to keep in mind that these type of things happen quite regularly at dog parks. I see a lot of dogs who are not having fun. It's really important, whether your dog is the one doing the big signs of trouble or the big signals of fun, that you still have an idea of what's happening and you can call your dog away. We should not allow our dogs to bully others, and we should not allow our dogs to be bullied. Okay, so again, difference between loose and happy and tight and worried. These are the same puppies above and below. Again, that's my dog. I have a lot of pictures of my dog, which I'm sure you all do too. But the one on the left is a friend of mine's puppy. The top left, loose face, loose tongue, very relaxed. Yes, thank you. They are adorable. And then below, actually, she's looking a little stressed there, right? Her face looks a little worried. Her eyes are a little bit tight. Her face is her mouth is closed. Those are the difference between happy and unhappy. Not seriously unhappy, but those are things we need to keep an eye on, right? And then my dog on the right top, she is happy as a pig in poop in that moment because somebody she really likes is taking her picture. And below, she is not very happy and she's quite stressed. This is when she was quite a bit younger. We were trying to get her a massage from a friend of mine, a canine massage, and she found it very stressful. So we didn't actually get the massage done. But you can see her ears are way down, right? And if you could look closer, it's hard because of the size of the picture, but her tongue is spatulate. It's hanging out a little bit and it's flat. And you can see a little bit of whale eye. So she's really saying, please don't do that to me. I really don't like it. So these are things we have to look at and then respect the dog and find a way to help them be more comfortable. Moving on. At the dog park. See, there's my dog again. Is your dog happy? I mean, really happy at the park. If they're not happy at the park, you shouldn't be there. It's not social time for the owners, or it shouldn't be. I mean, you can have some social time, don't get me wrong. But if your dog is not happy there, there's no reason for you to be there. Don't let people pressure you to take your dog. Is your dog old enough to be at the park? So a lot of people take little young puppies, and I personally think it's very dangerous to do so because there are a lot of dogs that do not like puppies. And all it takes, especially if you're in the middle of your socialization period, is one bad event with another dog to create a lifelong fear. So don't take your puppies till they're at least 5, maybe even 6 months old, to be honest. Unless you really, really know the crowd and it's a small park and you can manage your puppy, okay? Does your dog steal toys or cause fights? My puppy hates her harness. Oh yeah, we'll talk about that type of stuff. Does your dog have to go to the park? Does your dog steal toys or cause fights? If your dog is stealing other dogs' toys, that can be problematic more for the humans than the dogs, but it also might get your dog beat up, right? Because it's rude. The rule generally with dogs is possession is 9/10 of the law. So if a dog has a stick or a toy or whatever in their grip or sitting right in front of them, if your dog runs up and goes and steals that toy right from beneath them, that your dog is being rude and is likely to get told. So we can teach a good leave it. We can make sure we bring our own toys to the park, etc. There are things we can do to fix that. Can your dog come out of play, or if there's stress, can they recall to you? So you really need to be able to say, hey, get over here, and have your dog come to you and get a cookie whenever there's a problem, okay? So then we talk a little bit about humans. What are you doing at the park? If you're standing in a group of people and you are not all facing your dogs where you can see them at all times, you are not supervising your dog. Yes, you can have a coffee. I don't care. You can even be on your phone occasionally if you want to take pictures or whatever of your dog. But if you are talking on the phone, you need to have your eyes on your dog at all times. And you have to recognize that it's your responsibility to keep your dog safe and to keep other people safe. You need to know when to intervene, which again is a body language thing you get used to. You need to know body language. You need to know your tools that you're using. And so this is a comment towards people who use choke chains, heavy leather collars with buckles, and prong collars. Again, if you want to use them for training, that's fine. They don't belong in a dog park. The main reason being, if your dog is not wearing a buckle collar that you can, like the plastic ones that you can pull apart, or it's not made of fabric that you can easily cut if you need to, and your dog gets caught up with another dog, they can die. So in the dog parks, people should not be allowing their dogs to play with dogs wearing prongs, etc. And if they use those types of tools, they should come off at the park. Collars can be very unsafe, okay? When we talk about toys, Toys can also be unsafe. I know of several dogs who have choked on tennis balls. These are big dogs. And they're very difficult to get out if they're stuck there. So I always use balls that have straps attached or ropes attached so that if I need to, I can pull them out. Or I use balls that are too big to go into the back of the dog's mouth. So that's just a little safety stuff.
Here's a question. Often when you take a dog to the off-leash park, for first time or not very often, all the dogs come to see the dog and they start sometimes a little bit of a bullying or intimidation scene.
At the gate?
Yes, at the gate. So how do you introduce the dog properly to the off-leash park at the gate?
Well, again, if you have the double gates, which most parks now do, which is great, you can stay within the double gates and ask people to take their dogs away from the gate and wait before you come in. I will usually, like with my dog, I mean, it's natural for them to want to run up to the, like, oh, look, there's someone here. And then, of course, they end up with like 10 dogs and the poor dog coming in is terrified because there's too many dogs there. I will call my dog away. So that's what you should be doing, is not allowing your dog, to rush other dogs at the park. Stay away from the gates, call them away. And then when the dog has a chance to come in and kind of get to talking to people, then you can let your dog go say hi. Okay, so nature versus nurture. We're going to talk a little bit about breeds. There's a lot of misunderstandings out there about dogs, and there's a lot of misunderstandings about what breeds are bred to do, what certain dogs are bred to do. And a lot of people get dogs that are not the right dogs for them, or they take dogs that are really not great dog park dogs to parks, and so on and so forth. So we're going to talk quickly a little bit about different breeds. These dogs have been selected over hundreds of years to make particular behaviors very strong, whether that is dog aggression, whether that is digging, whether that is predatory behavior, guarding behavior. These dogs are bred specifically for these things. And that makes them not necessarily the ideal lap dog. So we have to be really, really aware of what our breed propensities are. You are going to see within like one litter, for example, of a certain breed, you're going to see different levels. Like there might be a dog that's not chosen to continue to work because it's not much of a worker. That's the outlier. That's not the normal. So we have to recognize that. You might be able to get a really docile Belgian Malinois, for example, but the majority of them are super drivey, not super tolerant with other dogs, want to be working all the time, need to work 5 hours a day, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So I, in the past 3 months, have had to rehome 3 Belgian Malinois or, docile Mallee, exactly. Either that Malinois or Dutch Shepherds, which are similar type dogs, because they were in homes and the people couldn't deal with them. So this shouldn't happen. They shouldn't have to have that sort of stress happen where they have to be, rehomed. Okay. So we look at early socialization and training can make a difference for many dogs, but it still will not take away their genetic propensity towards things. Okay. Genetic propensities often don't show up in dogs until their social maturity, like we talked about earlier. Dog aggression, guarding things, guarding your house, all those things come up a little bit later. So as much as you can do your best to socialize enough that you hope your dog will make good decisions about guarding things, they're still probably going to, at 1.5 to 2 years old, start saying, I'm not sure about that person, or I'm not sure about that dog. So we have to be really, don't be surprised if your dog suddenly starts doing stuff at 2 that you didn't think they'd ever do. So far left, we have a Jack Russell who is coming out from under a tree because he's dug a hole. So if you have, you're looking for dogs and you don't want a dog who digs, then don't get a terrier. Terriers can also be very predatory, right? So they might go after your cat. They might go after the mice. They might go after the rats. They might go after other dogs. It's hard to say. So again, depends a lot on the line that they're bred from. It depends a lot on what training you put in, but don't be surprised if they start doing stuff at about 2 years old. The Belgian Malinois, which is the second one on the top row, that dog is climbing a tree to get a toy. So that kind of says a lot about that. Those are not normal pet dogs. These are dogs that need to be worked hours and hours of each day, both mentally and physically. The next dog over is a Great Pyrenees, which we often see in the dog parks and stuff in town. They can be great pets, but they also have been bred to be dog aggressive and have been bred to protect their flock at all costs. So yes, they're going to guard your house. They may or may not be dog aggressive as adults. You don't know. And these dogs were bred to keep wolves away from their sheep. So they're very brave dogs. The dog on the right is a bull mastiff. Again, some of them are so awesome, like just awesome, great pet dogs. They're often great with kids, but these are man-stopper dogs. And yes, they will guard your house. So again, proper training, proper socialization. We have to recognize that that stuff has to happen as puppies to help prevent them making bad decisions when they do guard, because they are going to guard. The bottom left is a Cavalier King Charles. That is a dog bred specifically to be a lap dog. So yay. That being said, they're also pretty active. So they would be great little sport dogs for like agility and stuff like that. But they were bred to be people dogs, like the one who sits in your lap. Okay. So if that's what you're looking for, those are the type of dogs you want to go for. The Golden Retriever at the bottom, again, Goldens are great dogs, and retrievers want to retrieve a lot, and they eat everything, and they take a long time to mature. So again, you have to know your breed, and you have to know whether you're getting a dog from working lines, like what they call field Goldens, which are very high drive dogs, versus the Golden that sits, at your feet all the time. So you have to kind of know where they're coming from. The dog on the bottom right is a pointer. It's a German short-haired pointer, and they are part of the gun dog group, and they need massive amounts of exercise. They are also, because they're very sensitive dogs, tend to have separation anxiety and can jump very high. So there's lots of things we have to look at when we're choosing a dog breed. The next slide talks about the different groups. So breed types. We have hounds, so your beagles, your dachshund, your greyhound, your Irish wolfhound. All of these dogs are quite predatory, some more than others, like the dachshund and the greyhound tend to be quite predatory, which means they'll chase small dogs, so be careful. Terriers, which again can go everything from your little Yorkie to Airedales, which are big terriers, and even pit bull terriers, even though they also go in the bulldog section. Some of these dogs fit in different areas. Mastiffs, retrievers, obviously Goldens, Labradors, poodles are considered retrievers. They're field dogs. Pointing dogs, the German short-haired pointers, the Vizsla, et cetera, et cetera. Bulldogs, companion dogs, so again, like the Cavalier. Herders, flock guardians, which again are the Great Pyrenees and types like that. And the working dog group, which are ones that kind of fit in several different places. A pug would be considered a companion dog, right? They're not generally used for sport. They're not generally used for work. Doesn't say they can't, but it's not what they were bred for. They're really bred to be pets. So again, we have to look at almost all of these dogs can be decent pets as long as you give them what they require in the sense of jobs to do, proper training, proper mental training, and enough exercise. So just know what you're getting, because the number of dogs that end up, like I said, that end up in shelters or rescues because the people are like, I don't know, we hit 2 and I don't know what to do with this dog anymore. They're people who didn't choose the right dog. Okay. Okay. When to call in a pro. So this is a big thing. I mean, I personally, as a trainer, I might be a little biased, but I think that when you get a new dog, you should get a new trainer or an old trainer if you have one you like. There's a lot of adjustment that goes through. There's a lot of people who haven't had dogs in years, or again, have had bad information and don't really know what to do. When you get a puppy, don't wait until you have problems. So get a puppy trainer in when you first get your puppy, like within a week of getting your puppy, and so that you can talk about the proper way of house training, the proper way of socializing safely, what types of things to teach your dog and not teach your dog, how to find a good veterinarian. I mean, there's lots of things we can help you with that get you started well. Talk about management so that you don't wait until later when your puppy starts, resource guarding or et cetera. Right? Get it started well so you have a support system in and you have a good source of good information. Google will give you all sorts of bad information as well as good information. And unless you know what you're looking for, you can make a lot of mistakes. You also should call in a professional if you have an older dog and you're seeing resource guarding, which again is they're guarding their food bowl, they're guarding their bones, they're guarding people. Sometimes they do that, guarding spaces like couches and chairs and so on and so forth. If you see reactivity or territorial behavior, so if you start to suddenly see your dog is yelling at people every time they come in, or on leash, they're reacting to other dogs or people, etc. Signs of fear, you definitely should talk to a trainer who specializes in fear, who knows something about fear, and aggression, of course, and separation anxiety. These are all things that you need help with. Don't wait and don't just throw, spaghetti at the wall seeing what sticks. Okay? Talk to somebody who's qualified. My dog is going to start barking at me any moment. Where's your toy? Go get your toy. Okay, so what kind of professional? Here's the thing. There are a bunch of us out there. First off, if you see a sudden change in behavior, it should be considered a health issue first. So you need to go to your vet. You need to make sure that there's not like a urinary tract infection or pain or organic issue like kidneys or, thyroid. There's all sorts of things that can affect behavior. So most cases, like I see dogs that have suddenly started to get behavior. My dog is barking. This is life of a dog professional, right? The dog who barks. You really need to make sure that the vet gets seen first. Certified professional dog trainer. So that's what I am, but there are other certifications out there. You kind of have to know what to look for. The KPA, CTP is somebody who's gone to the Karen Pryor Academy. The Academy for Dog Trainers. I cannot believe Shebang is barking during this. See, not everybody has perfect dogs, people. Behavior consultants, you want to look for CDBC, CBCCKA. These are people who have certifications in behavior, not just dog training, okay? And then there are behaviorists. These are people who have degrees in animal behavior in order to get these certifications, okay? A veterinary behaviorist is a veterinarian with a specialty in behavior. And they are often necessary if you have medical issues or if you have severe behavior related to medical issues, that sort of thing. Like sometimes a trainer will come work with you for a while, and if you don't see any improvement, they'll say, okay, it's time to go see a vet behaviorist because they're probably going to need medication for the issue to help work through the issue. So you have to kind of look at what kind of pro you want. The certified professional dog trainers, the list that I put up are actually, there are more than just those, but it would be a very long list. And there are certainly people who are certified that do different kinds of training. So you might have to do some research on that. But generally, the ones that I've listed are ones that do positive reinforcement training, have a good background and knowledge about behavior theory, and really know how to change behavior. Okay, so when you're hiring a trainer, look for valid certifications, absolutely, or experience. So there are some really good trainers out there that don't have certifications, that don't consider them very valuable or worth the money, et cetera, et cetera. What you want to see from those people, like if somebody refers you to somebody, is evidence that they have done continuing education. So whether they actually go and write the tests for certification is less important than if they've actually just been doing continuing education, because at least then you know they've got the up-to-date methodologies and they know a little bit about what they're doing. What you always should ask is, what tools are they going to use with your dog? So are they going to use a clicker? Are they going to use a slip leash? Are they going to use a prong collar? Are they going to use an e-collar? I'm not judging any one of those, though I'm not a fan of most. But you need to know ahead of time what they're going to use, okay? And then you ask, what exactly are you going to do to my dog if something goes wrong? And what exactly will you do if my dog does something right? So that you don't go in there and find, partway into your session that, they're going to smack your dog on the head when it does something wrong, because nobody wants to have their dog smacked on the head. So you have to make sure that you ask these questions before you spend your money. Okay. But also know that even if you do go to a class or go to a trainer and this stuff happens, you have every right, if you do not like what is happening, to take your dog and go away. You have every right to do that. It is your job to protect your dog. This goes the same like with going to a veterinarian. If you don't like how they handle your dog, you have every right to say, don't do that to my dog. Okay. And if you don't want to say it, call me, I'll say it. So red flags. So if you're looking at, or they're talking to somebody and this comes up, or if you notice it on their website, red flags are talk of alpha or leadership in forceful terms, like, oh, you must have structured walks and you have to be forceful, make sure your dog knows that you don't like that sort of thing. Those, again, are signs of trainers who have not moved into the 21st century and do not have upgraded continuing education. If they're anti-treat, that's also a problem. Mostly because most good trainers know, even balanced trainers know, that if you're going to do behavior modification or you can do any training, that you teach stuff through positive reinforcement first, and then later you add, if you want, you proof things through punishment. So, excuse me, I'm giving my dog something. Yeah. So yeah, you need to make sure you know what you're doing. And you need to make sure that your trainers know what they're doing, because there are no regulations about training. Anybody who has ever had a dog could put up a sign that says, I'm a dog trainer. So don't waste your money. Use your money towards somebody who has spent time doing what needs to be done. And thank you for attending. We're going to have all questions now, so feel free to hang out. You're still on mute.
Hello, I have a question. What about the clicker? When you're training the dog, do you really need a clicker, or is just the treat enough?
You don't need a clicker. I just find clickers as a tool for certain exercises are actually really helpful. You can still use a verbal marker. A clicker is just a marker. It says, that's the thing. That's the right thing. There's a cookie coming. Okay, so they still get a cookie. But to me, it clarifies to the dog exactly why they're getting the cookie. That's all. So it's not necessary. I show all of my clients about the clicker, and then they decide if they want to use it or not, because it doesn't mean. Can you talk about the fight I have over the harness every walk? Ruckus. I love that name, by the way. I have a cat named Ruckus. Give me one sec. Come here, you. Somebody's collar is clanking on the dish that I just gave my dog. Okay, so let's talk quickly about harnesses. Harnesses, are you the gentleman? You have a pug? I'm assuming, I don't know. Are you man or woman? I don't even know. He, she, they. Okay, and you have a pug, correct? A Yorkie Puggle. Woo, that's fun. Okay, so small dogs especially have a hard time sometimes with harnesses. I don't know if it's actually the harnesses the problem, or if it's the fact that we lean over them to put the harness on. So it may be important to think about how you put the harness on your dog. Like if you could pick her or him up, it goes on her feet. Okay, so it's one of the ones that comes up and clicks on the back. Yes, okay. Those are hard generally, just because it's hard to get the dog maneuvered properly to get their feet into the bits at the step-in harness. I don't like step-in harnesses for that reason. It's a big struggle all the time. So you have a couple of different options. One is to try to put something, let me see, dog's probably food motivated. So you could put a little bit of like a Kong with a little bit of peanut butter or something in it for her to lick, and then just lift her front body, put the thing on, get it on. Something to keep her busy while you're doing it. That helps. There is also, if you wanted to do something really complicated, but I don't know if you do or not, some people like the challenge with a clicker, to shape them actually putting their feet in the holes, which is kind of fun. But that's me because I'm a trainer geek. So of course. But that's what I would do, is use food as a bit of a distraction. They get a treat, the harness goes on. After a while, they'll be better about getting the harness on in general. But honestly, I just find the whole step-in harnesses to just be a bit of a challenge regardless. Do you live with somebody who can give you a hand with it, or are you trying to do it yourself? Okay. Yeah. So I would make sure she gets treats. And honestly, if she hates it that much, I'd switch harnesses. I'd probably look at getting one of those little vest harnesses. You know, it has a the little fabric piece at the front type of thing. They're just easier to get on and off, like the ones that go over their head. And you can just lure the head through the harness and then just pop it on. So that would probably be easier. Okay, yeah. I like those ones, especially for the small dogs. Goes on head first. And again, you still have to teach the dog to put their head through. Like, I actually have a picture of my old dog from before. I worked so much on putting things over her head. We did a lot that when I bought a new harness, all I did was take it out of the package, and it wasn't even ready to go on her, and she just stuck her head in. So the more you work on that, the easier it is to do. Anyone else have questions? You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Maggie. This has been great. I have a question right now. I'm having trouble getting my new rehomed, very good girl to go potty inside my fence yard. Any tips?
There was a bunch of stuff when you just talked, so I couldn't hear the whole question. Having trouble getting.
So it's a new dog that was in another home. Got to the new home. She's very good, but when she goes potty, it's difficult to go inside the fence yard.
Okay, she'll only pee on walks.
Let's see. Judy, can you give us more information? Only outside on the leash. So no, in the yard, which will be easier for everyone. For everyone.
Yes, I do come to your house. Just Karen asked another question. Okay, so Judy, sometimes with a newly rehomed dog, being loose in a yard is kind of stressful for them. They also may have never had the opportunity to go in a yard. She may have always gone while on a leash. So what I would probably do is take her on a leash, but take her into the backyard, walk her around the backyard, see if she'll go. Make sure you reward her if she does go, and give her time, because a lot of times it's just they're not familiar with the space and they're not sure if they're allowed to go pee in the backyard. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah, and it might take some time. I mean, I've met a lot of dogs who actually, there was a dog I used to walk who also was a rehome, and he had been sort of tethered in a backyard in suburbia for his entire life. And he was 4 or 5 years old. Once he figured out that he could go out on walks, he never wanted to poop or pee in the backyard again. But that's because he'd spent the whole entire time, his whole life, in a backyard. So sometimes we just have to assume there's reasons for the behavior and do our best to help make the dog comfortable, and hopefully the behavior will come along, because we can't really force them to go pee. Yeah. Is this Willow? Whiskey. Sorry, close. Look how close I was. This is somebody I know from Facebook. I was like, I think it's her. I'm not sure. Yes. So that's what I would do. I mean, new rescues, we don't, especially if we don't have a lot of history, they can be just weird for a while. Yeah.
So sweet. She
Yeah.
she sounds like a very sweet girl. Oh.
She is.
Oh.
I've seen some great
Oh.
pictures of her. She's just, yeah. But it takes a while to adjust. That's the thing, right? That's all.
For sure.
Anyone else have questions? How can we get in touch with you for training? Well, you can email me at info@tailspinpetworks.com. So it's Petworks has an X instead of a KS. I always have to say that to people when I'm like, when I chose it, I thought it looked really cool. And now it just, thanks, Juliana. And now I have to explain it all the time, which is kind of funny. But yes, feel free to email me. That would be great.